some information to share with you. As you may see on your screen, this meeting is being recorded so that we could share what we're going to discuss today with on a link to our website so that others who may not have been able to join are able to look at it, and you can go back and review it as well. The format for today is, as you can see right now, a Zoom poll has gone up and for you to fill out, so please do so. As you can see, is one question. It's not too difficult to fill out there, but the information is very helpful for us. And in addition to that, we'll be doing some introductions of the directors on hand today to share about the fellowship program. We're going to do a quick presentation with a PowerPoint to share a little bit about the details of our programs. And then we'll go to Q&A after that via the chat feature on Zoom. During that time, we will be answering questions as best we can. If we're unable to get to your question, you're welcome to email us, and we will respond to it for sure. But in addition to that, we'll also just be, if people ask the same kind of questions, we're going to stick to one answer for that, just to make sure everyone has enough time to be able to hear everything that's being said today. So with that, my name is Brian Aguilera. I'm the director of the Executive Fellows Program. I've been with the Center for California Studies now for about 7 years. I'm a former Executive Fellow myself as well. I'll have the other directors introduce themselves, and we'll start with Megan.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. My name is Megan Thorell. I'm the director of the Judicial Fellowship Program, and this is my 13th year at Sac State. Happy to be here with you all today.
Jamie Taylor, Senate Fellows Program Director. I've been with the Center for California Studies since 2018. I am also acting in the capacity of Interim Director for the Assembly Fellowship Program, as we've had a recent vacancy in the director position there.
So folks, with that, also with us today, we have Mal Almeida, and Mal is the coordinator for the Judicial Fellowship Program, and he is going to be moderating and doing a lot of technical stuff behind the scenes. So if you hear me say, hey, Mal, help me out here, that's who we're talking to. So with that, Mal, let's move into the PowerPoint, if you don't mind. So again, folks, we are the Capital Fellows programs. It consists of 4 programs: the Executive Fellowship Program, the Assembly Fellowship Program, and the Senate Fellows Program and Judicial Fellowship Program. And we are housed at Sacramento State. Next slide now, please. So our programs offer a unique opportunity to participate in policymaking and development. Fellows work for 10 to 11 months, depending upon the program, as paid members that work within the California State Assembly, the California State Senate, the California Judicial Branch, and the Executive Branch as well. Fellows actively engage in public service and prepare for future careers while getting firsthand experience in the governance and leadership of the most diverse, complex state in the nation. As you can see here, some photos here of fellows in action. Next slide, please. So some quick, fast facts that apply to all the programs. Minimum qualifications to be a Capital Fellow. Sorry, I almost said exec. I do that too much. For a Capital Fellows program is you have to have a bachelor's degree in any major, and either a cumulative undergraduate GPA of 2.5 or higher in the last 60 semester units or 90 quarter units, and a demonstrated interest in state government and public service. You must be 20 years of age or older by September 1st of the fellowship year. And non-U.S. citizens must provide proof of appropriate immigration status, as the Capital Fellows programs do not meet the requirements for F1 or J1 visas, and we do not participate in the E-Verify program either. All fellows receive a monthly stipend of $2,964. They are enrolled in 6 graduate units, depending upon the program in the poli-sci or public policy departments. And all fellows are awarded a graduate certificate in applied policy and government upon successful completion of the fellowship, which means not only their placement, but the seminar as well. All fellows are provided health, vision, and dental benefits, student loan deferments available for fellows who participate, and you're provided free transit passes in the Sacramento region as well. Next slide, please, Mel. All right. And so, as you can see, fellows participate in a lot of different types of opportunities. It depends on the program. It depends on the placement. We all have an orientation phase in the beginning of our programs. And once fellows begin their full-time participation in their respective offices, They help draft for the legislation, write speeches, chair meetings, conduct briefings, develop and research court projects, programs, and much, much, much more. But all fellows are required to participate and attend in the academic seminar. These are taught by Sacramento State faculty, and seminar discussions explore topics such as the state budget, civil service, executive leadership, and the relationship of government institutions to society that they happen to serve. So we get to, fellows will be interacting on at least a weekly basis in this seminar, and in some cases on a monthly basis as well, where they review current trends in California state government and interact with guest speakers. And all of the fellowship assignments are in the Sacramento area, with the exception of the Judicial Fellowship Program, which offers placements statewide. And I will let Megan describe that later on when we review the Judicial Fellows Program. Next slide, please. So who can apply? Individuals can apply to more than one of the programs that meet their interests and qualifications. It's not unusual for us to have applicants that apply to all 4 programs in the same year. Fellows come from all economic, cultural, career, and education backgrounds, and no previous legislative or political experience is required. And we have a number of fellows who apply immediately after undergraduate or well into their careers as well. Recent graduates, postgraduate, mid-career applicants are welcome to apply, and applicants with any party affiliation are welcome to apply, including Republicans, Democrats, and people affiliated with third parties or no party at all. Applicants must meet the minimum qualifications to be considered, as was mentioned in the prior slides. Next slide, please. And so for the next 2 programs, I will let Jamie take it away. Jamie? Oh, Jamie, you're on mute.
Yep, that is something I do every time. So thank you very much, everyone, and welcome. This is our first real, if you will, our virtual open house informational session on our programs here. We've usually done this in person by meeting with different students on campus and or having open house type information where we can in person at the Capitol. So this is unique, and so we feel quite honored to be able to reach a larger audience in this way, and excited to have you here today. So both the Assembly and Senate fellowship programs sort of are represented within the legislative branch of government. So they're quite similar in nature in that we have 18 fellows who are placed in each of the each placement office of the participating members. So for within the Assembly, you will have at this time 13 Democrats and 5 Republicans placed. That's based on representation, political representation of the state. And there are 80 members in the Assembly, so fellows go through a 8-week orientation, both in the Assembly as well as the Senate, very similar. 7 to 8 week orientation where they go through the process of learning about the people, the process, the policy, the politics, and the press. Those are all issues that affect your daily life as a fellow. As a fellow, you operate as a legislative aide and receive the same kind of work product requirements for both the Assembly and the Senate. You will likely be working on legislation. You'll go from basic discovery of how the legislative process works, who you need to work with, how to get things done, to active participation. And by the end of the year, you will be skillful and have a great amount of tools in your tool belt in order to look at issues of the day, issues that affect constituents, the district in which your member represents. You can look at a static issue, an issue that is affecting those constituents, and you can think about ways to impact change in politically and within the policy realm to affect change in the state and in that district. So it's really empowering. That those first 7 weeks, as I mentioned, you get to know individuals in the legislature who are in leadership roles, who share knowledge and information. You're mentored in many cases by them. You learn the process. So how does a bill become a law? How do you introduce a bill? How do you amend a bill? How do you work with Leg Counsel? They are the attorneys for the legislature to ensure that legislation meets the constitutional requirements and will stand the test of time and are durable in our state's courts. You'll learn a lot about the policy issues that affect the state, and you'll learn about the politics. Sometimes whether it's a good idea or not, politically it may not be feasible to do it, Financially, it may not be feasible to do it. And so you learn a great deal about how to get things done because of those two areas, the policy and the politics. You'll learn the press coming up in the next couple of weeks. We'll be meeting with the LA Times to talk about what they do with it, how they present news that is California policy related news. And it's very exciting because we get to learn firsthand from those who are professionals in our space about how to be effective. So after those 6 to 7 weeks of orientation, you then go through a process of, well, you'll be interviewing during that time, and then you're placed. Throughout the year, you'll grow and expand your knowledge as well as your network. And then towards the end of the program, you will be in a position where you'll have an opportunity to seek employment post-fellowship. This last year, we had, well, right now we have 13 fellows that are still within the legislature after the program. So 13 out of 18, it's a strong number. And we pour into you during this time. And we hope that because this is a critical staffing element of the legislature, that you'll want to stick around. You don't have to. It's not a requirement. It's great that you have this 1 year under your belt working in the legislature and get to go on and affect change in other areas as well. But we do heavily promote the fellowship in ways that help to create a backbench for the legislature. Same is true for the Senate. I don't know if you all want me to go on to the Senate because they're very, very similar in nature. I'm happy to do that. But there are 80 members in the Assembly, 40 members in the Senate. So 2 different houses. There are cultural differences between the House in terms of how business gets done. I think with 80 members, you have more people at the table. Here are the Senate fellows that you're seeing. With Senate fellows, they work with 18 placement offices, and there are 40 members. It's a smaller house. It is considered the upper house versus the lower house. Just essentially, there are some traditions there. The one difference between the Senate and the Assembly is the Senate has the ability and the power to appoint governors, confirm governors' appointees. That is one big difference between the two houses, but they're very similar in nature. They do the same kinds of work. Both houses interact in that bills that pass through the Assembly head over to the Senate, and then have to go through both houses in order to pass and move on to the governor. So it's a really unique opportunity. I'll leave it there. I'm sure there's much more to be asked in your questions. I'm happy to do so.
Hi, everyone. I'm looking forward to sharing more with you about the Judicial Fellowship Program. As Brian said, the Judicial Fellowship Program is the only one of the Capital Fellows programs that offers the opportunity to serve in communities throughout the state of California. We have placements in Southern California, the Bay Area, Sacramento Valley, and Northern California. So we really provide kind of a wide geographic range of where you can serve. Judicial Fellows work in superior courts and judicial council offices throughout the state of California. So when I say that a fellow works in a superior court, I specifically mean that the fellows work in the executive offices of the superior courts of California and in the judicial council offices of Office of Governmental Affairs this year, and also the criminal justice services. The fellows do not work inside a courtroom with a judge. So this is different, important to differentiate, because we are not a legal fellowship. We are a fellowship that's focused on the policy component of the judicial branch. The judicial fellows work in an extremely dynamic environment where you are at this really interesting intersection of criminal justice policy and the judicial branch. So for example, I have fellows who are currently researching the no cash bail system. So if we remove cash bail from our operations in the branch, then my fellow is working on researching what risk assessment tools should the court use in place of a cash bail system. And this fellow is going to conduct a year-long research project and write a paper, present to the panel of judges, and to the court executive team. And so this is her fellowship project. It's a fellowship project that starts in the fall, goes all the way through the 10-month-long fellowship program, and it is a really meaty project. This is in addition to everything else that she's assigned. So Judicial Fellows really have a full plate when it comes to policy research, program implementation. I have a fellow who's working in the collaborative court unit at the Sacramento Superior Court. So taking a really deep dive into these specialty pieces of California courts and the judicial branch. Fellows also participate in a graduate level seminar. So we meet every other week and talk about different policies and administrative functions from an academic perspective. And there's an academic advisor who teaches that program. And then we also have field seminars, which is a fancy word for field trip. Right now, our field trips are virtual, but when it is permissible, we will be doing these sort of things in person. And we do court observations. We talk to judicial officers. We learn about the real world problems that we're encountering in the courts. And we are studying the ideas that people are looking to implement in order to increase access to justice in California. That's our mission. All the fellows work towards that same goal of increasing access to justice in California. It's a super dynamic program. Every day is different. No one day is the same. I think that's a trend with all the Capital Fellows. Follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, Instagram, and we have a blog. I think our Instagram is really special because we have featured fellows. And so you get a taste of what the different fellows are doing in the different placement offices, the type of work that they're exposed to, and the different ways that they're working to fulfill that mission of increasing access to justice. I will flip it over to Brian for exec.
Awesome. And so the Executive Fellowship Program, much like its counterparts, so just a small detail to share as well. The Assembly, Senate, and Executive Fellows programs have enough spots for 18 fellows within each. The Judicial Fellows Program specifically serves 10. So that's that's a small difference there. But the Executive Fellowship Program is designed to help provide 18 young professionals interested in beginning a career in public service with an experience that comes from working in the highest levels of government through the executive branch. So this is primarily working in the areas of implementing and institutionalizing and protecting the rules and laws of our state. The broad range of issues that the executive branch deals with provides fellows with valuable insight and experiences in public policy and politics. And the 5 things I think I share with most interested applicants and even with the fellows when they arrive is that there's really 5 or 6 areas that the fellows can expect to be exposed to during their time in the fellowship program. And so specifically the areas would be budgeting. How do you run and pay for an organization? And how do you account for the costs of running programs? Legislation, how do you impact and make sure that legislation that is coming out of the Capitol is going to be something that you can implement, and that's something that you can work with the legislature to make sure that the needs of Californians are being met in an effective way. It's not really useful to have legislation that we can't implement. We got to make sure that works. Communications, dealing with broadly communicating the message of what the administration is involved in. Public administration, so running organizations that can vary in size between offices that fellows are participating in right now can be as small as 12 or running organizations as large as several thousand, up to 10,000 folks. And then subject matter expertise, learning the ins and outs at a very much more specific level in particular policy areas, from water to health and human services, to the environment, to safety, to you name it. And so fellows are really exposed to this by participating in a variety of offices and placements at the highest levels within not only the governor's office and offices affiliated with the governor's office, but constitutional offices, those representatives of government that are elected independently, such as our Attorney General and Secretary of State, as well as being placed with high-ranking officials at the agency level, department level, bureaus, boards, commissions, and authorities. The diversity of placements in the executive branch is very, very, very large. Executive fellows function as full-time professional staff in these offices. You are essentially a special assistant to either a deputy secretary, deputy executive director, or secretary, or director within these offices. These programs uniquely integrate work experiences with academic and professional development as well. So gaining experience in the development and implementation of legislation and more is really important. So one of the core set of skills you're going to get out of this as well is relationships. Nothing gets done in and around government for sure. And as one as large as California's, but fundamentally as small, the capital area is actually kind of small in terms of the community without maintaining and developing good relationships. But getting to see the complexities of what it takes to run a government that has over 250,000 employees that serves the behest of almost 40 million Californians. So you'll get a comprehensive training about the California state government, and you'll be learning about this firsthand from individuals throughout. This is during orientation. Our orientation is about 5 weeks long, and fellows are introduced to the broad breadth of concepts of what it takes to run a state, how California runs and how it all works together, as well as learning about the experiences and how to take the best, how to make the most of your year from alumni who are still within the organization and beyond. Currently, this last year's class of 18 fellows that graduated in August of 2020, 16 were able to find gainful employment within the, 15 were able to get employment within the government afterwards. And then the other 3, 1 went on to a nonprofit and 2 went on to grad school. So we too also do not promise jobs at the end of our program, as the other programs do as well. None of us promise you will get a job, but the level of exposure and the level of work that you are provided as a fellow, once you're able to complete that and do that and perform well, finding gainful employment is not hard to do for sure. And we all help with that in that process. We look to our fellowship programs as one of the primary ways in which we're bringing in the best and brightest young talent we can into state government. So it behooves us to go that extra mile to make sure that you have all the resources necessary should you wish to stay on in service as well. Next slide. So our application deadline is fast approaching, February 1st, 2021. So less than a month away. The deadline is literally 11:59 p.m. So if you send it to us at 12 midnight, you're technically February 2nd, and your application will not be admitted. This has happened before. You have access to our website and to follow us on a variety of social media platforms to learn more about this as well. But we also have at the same landing spot that you went to register for this webinar or this information session, access to a YouTube video that shows you how to apply as well. So for now, what we're going to do is peel off from our PowerPoint, and we're going to go into questions. We're going to have Mal open the chat room, and I'll be moderating the chat questions that come in. So you're welcome to offer questions to us, and I'll take a shot, Jamie, Megan, and I, on answering your questions.
While those are coming in, I just want to also add that that 11:59 deadline, February 1st, is 11:59 PST, so Pacific Standard Time, West Coast time. If you're, checking in here from another state in another time zone, make sure that it's PST.
So the first couple of questions are regard to COVID. How does the interview process differ this year with COVID, and how has the fellowship adapted to accommodate for COVID? Megan, would you like to take the first one on that?
Sure. And so this year we anticipate our interviews being conducted online through Zoom. This is what we did last year at the start of the pandemic, and it worked out pretty well. We are going to take that same form this year. In terms of how COVID has impacted the fellowship, I've actually been really pleasantly surprised how easily our programming and our curriculum has adapted to the virtual format. Fellows do have their academic seminars and field seminars remote right now, and we do that online. When it's appropriate and all the health and safety protocols are aligned. Fellows have been able to serve in placement in person. There are fellows who are fully remote. It's on a case-by-case, very specific basis.
Jamie, another question was around, are there opportunities to work on specific committees?
Yes, there are in the Senate currently. What we do in October before fellows begin their begin the program and begin orientation, we reach out to leadership and we notify them that we are opening up the application for member and committee office applications. So it's sort of open to whichever offices are interested in a fellow, and everybody that's interested. That is, every member office or committee that is interested gets an opportunity to interview the fellows. And so this last year, and most recently, I would say for the last 3 years at least, we've had a fellow in public safety and governance and finance committee on the Senate side. Not the case on the Assembly in the last couple of years, although there is some history of that in the past. And so it could be that they do it in the coming year. They may not. I'm not quite sure yet. But I would say the alternative to a committee is I also have a fellow in the Republican caucus in a policy unit. So not necessarily in a member's office, not in a committee, but in the Republican policy unit. So that is one exception, but it is year to year on the Senate side, what we determine.
Jamie, one question that came up as well was how fellows are placed within offices. Could you describe a little bit how that happens with the Assembly and Senate?
Sure. We advise both cohorts, both groups of fellows to apply to as many offices as possible. So this last year, on average, we had about, for each fellow on the Democratic side, because there are more Democratic members in both the Senate and the Assembly, we saw an average of 14 to 15 interviews per fellow. Those are traditionally half an hour to 1 hour interviews. We block out a whole week so that they can do that. And they organize their own scheduled appointments with member offices that are interested. We have a database that they can search to see which members are interested. They can look at background and information about the member office that is participating. So they do their research, they prepare, they interview. Inevitably, over time, within a week to 2 weeks' time, they rank their experience. The member or committee office also ranks their experience with that interviewee, so with the fellow. And so after the week and a half to 2 weeks, I begin to process those rankings, and we try to match based on the ranking. So if you had a wonderful experience and out of the 15 interviews you had a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, well, in your one also you interviewed in a member office or committee office and they ranked you a 1, well, it would be a 1-to-1 ranking, and it would be very simple for me to place you. But it doesn't always work out that way. In fact, most of the time it doesn't. So we ask you to be open-minded and have at least 5 to 6 solid placement options. We do not promise who you'll be placed in, which office you'll be placed in. What we promise is that you'll be gainfully employed during this year, that you'll have a job.
And for the executive fellowship program, it's very similar as well. There are fellows go through interviews with multiple offices. We have anywhere between 3 to 4 dozen offices that are interested in serving as a placement for 18 fellows, and fellows are encouraged to interview with no less than a dozen offices. And the rankings process is very similar to that as well. However, what I must urge is that at least half of our fellows get placed in offices they never heard of before they join the fellowship program, doing policy work they never knew existed before. So we do not promise any particular policy area being open for a fellow. When fellows say, or applicants will say, hey, I'd like to be placed in the education one, I say, that's great. That probably won't happen and may not happen, and I can't promise that it will. So you have to come up with an open mind for that for sure, but it is generally based upon the same kind of principles where there is a match between the mentor and the fellow in terms of both interest and like working and learning styles as well. I'll leave it to Megan to describe how the Judicial Fellows process works.
The Judicial Fellowship process for placements is very different. If you are selected to interview for the Judicial Fellowship program, you're provided a placement information booklet that lists and describes all of the courts and offices that are available for placement in the upcoming fellowship year. there are more placement opportunities than there are fellows to go around. Within the placement booklet, there's descriptions about the different types of work that you're going to do, the mentors that are at the individual courts, and then we give specific location information. So for example, Los Angeles, which is basically one of the biggest court systems in the world, with dozens of different locations, our fellow is placed at Stanley Mosque in the downtown Los Angeles area. So we're very specific when it comes to that. We ask that applicants review the placement information booklet prior to their interview. Also, applicants who are selected to interview must submit a placement ranking sheet prior to the interview. If you are selected to interview, all this is provided in a memo with deadlines and dates and important information. During your interview, we talk about your placement ranking sheet and the placements that you have ranked as your preference. And if there are specific reasons for that, for example, if you have a home and a family in the Sacramento area and you want to stay in the Sacramento area and that has dictated your placements, then we talk about that as a committee. In the end though, when you're selected for the Judicial Fellowship Program, you're offered a spot in the class and a placement simultaneously. So it's congratulations, we're offering you a spot in the class of 21-22, your placement is X. And you either accept or reject the entire package. The placements are at the sole discretion of the committee.
Great. A couple of questions on the recommendation process. One says, if you apply to 2 programs, could you have the same 3 recommenders for both programs? Just have the recommenders tailor each program letter. That is actually what we encourage. You don't have to go out and find new recommenders for every single one of these offices you wish to apply to. Tailoring them though to each program is actually a benefit for us, very much so. The one thing we would recommend though is having amongst your recommenders, not only somebody from an academic side, because this is a graduate program, one that can speak to your talents as a student, but from individuals who know you personally and know you very well, maybe even in a work setting as well. Supervisors you've had in nonprofit work and work on campuses and actual jobs and beyond as well are highly encouraged. Another question to ask about recommendations, are we allowed to submit more than 3 letters of recommendation? I can speak for my committee and say that if you do submit more than 3, we will read the first 3 and not the rest. We don't have enough time to read all the recommendation letters and want to make sure that since we require 3, everybody's going to be judged by 3. I don't know if Jamie or Megan have a different view of that as well. Megan?
You broke up a little bit, Brian, but I would agree 3 letters of recommendation is our requirement and it is sufficient. I would say have a spare in your back pocket might be a helpful piece of information. And by spare in your back pocket, I mean a spare recommender, somebody who could potentially step in if one of your 3 listed recommenders does not submit a letter for whatever reason.
Same with us. Please, be prepared for your recommender not being available to you when they committed to doing so. And you have to hustle and get that, extra one in place. But we would prefer you to just hit the mark of having 3 fellows or 3 recommendations. And there's quite a lot of reading that gets done for the multitude of applications that come in. So it's exponentially more reading for us. And so please try to stick with the 3.
And folks, that is a tough thing. Every single year we have a few fellows whose applications we cannot read or proceed to read because they are not complete, because they're missing 1 recommendation letter. And we send out multiple reminders to recommenders, both leading up to and even after the deadline to try and make sure those get in. But it happens every single year. So to the point of Jamie and Megan, be sure to have other ones available to you who can write a quick letter for you, or who are reliable, and make sure they do that. And you can always check in on the process in your application to see the progress of those recommendation letters coming in as well. Another question came in. It says they're studying international relations. Are there any positions related to global work? Within the executive branch, there are, but I can't promise that there will be. It varies by year and by placement for sure. One of the advantages, though, I think all of our programs have is that for serving in California, we are part of a larger global community, and so thusly a lot of that does sometimes happen. But I can't speak for there being a specific role for only international relations in the executive branch that fellows have access to on a consistent yearly basis.
For myself, I think it's great to have that background and skill set coming into the program. You've probably done a lot of skill stacking until this point in time, such that you can look at an issue or a policy concern and digest complex information and be able to distill that information. And so I would say water issues, agriculture issues, there are some connections, intersections there. We do have one member that represents the San Diego border, so obviously there's an obvious connection there, but just in the way that Brian has stated to you, can't promise that you'll be placed or that you'll have any of those experiences. And in fact, we recommend that you come into the program thinking that you'll be a generalist, and you'll probably, if your interest is to work on water, you'll probably end up working on education or something like that. All of these experiences lend themselves to you learning how to craft public policy, though, and with hard work, dedication, and small successes early on, you'll be entrusted to do more and conceivably could be handed any opportunity. But you're for the most part a generalist in the first year, and you will get an opportunity in some cases to propose a policy idea, and if that were to work in your respective office, then you've hit the jackpot. But we generally see that as much less, it's more the exception to the rule. You're a generalist, you're working on whatever's required for that member in that member office, and that could be a multitude of things. They all teach you this necessary skills to get just about anything done, though.
Brian, it looks like we're getting a lot of questions about California residents applying and out-of-state resident. Can we speak to that real quick?
Certainly. One of the questions mentioned is a preference made for in-state applicants. There is not a preference made for in-state applicants, but we do, because as we happen to know, a lot of California residents go out of state for college and then they apply back as well. But I've had a number of fellows throughout the years who have been from out of state as well, who are interested in the mission of California. It really does behoove out-of-state applicants to share why California is important to them and why this program in California is relevant to them. Megan or Jamie, any insight on that question?
No, I would just add that we give no preference to in-state or out-of-state. We don't give preference to UC versus CSU, private versus UC or CSU. So it's a very open system, open process. Apply if you're interested and meet all the requirements.
I would have to concur with that.
Another couple of criteria for the program. One to ask, is it possible to apply with just an associate's degree? It is not possible. A bachelor's degree is required. This is a graduate level program. You'll be enrolled in graduate courses and therefore must have completed a bachelor's degree. Another question was, how many applicants do we get a year normally? Normal hasn't quite happened to us this past year for sure, but there is always sustained interest in our programs. During the time that I've been here, we've never had any less than upwards of 900 to 1,000 and no more than 1,500 total applications between the 4 programs for sure. Don't let the numbers dissuade you at all, folks. We read every single application with the same level of intent that we do, even when we have lower numbers as well. And so we're always looking for the best and brightest. And so we encourage you all to apply, no matter how many applicants may be submitting applications for each of the programs. One question asks, they're currently enrolled in a grad program. Is it possible to continue your education via online classes while participating in the fellowship? I know for I think I speak for all the programs in saying that is not possible. You will be we all require that this be your primary and number one commitment during your time as a fellow, mainly because there are so many things to take advantage of between the seminar and your placement as well. So you're a full-time grad student and a full-time employee at the exact same time, working in the upper echelons of government where they are the most busy. If you are too busy during this year to be able to commit, to put your full commitment to that, we would encourage you to apply at a different time. And if Jamie or Megan have anything else to add to that, please do.
That's the same for us. We would suggest, you wear a big hat as a fellow, and we ask you not to wear multiple big hats, and make the legislative, the role that you have in the legislature your main focus. It is an intensive program. It's 9 to 5 for a while, and then you end up committing a lot of hours each day. And I think it'd be a stretch to do both, to be personally, to be honest with you. And I think it would be difficult. Plus, we want your main focus being that of the work that you're doing in the legislature.
Yeah, nothing to add there. It's a firm no for us. It's not permitted to be concurrently enrolled in any other graduate program, law school, night law school, or any alternative that has to do with enrollment other than the program that we run here.
Another question came up around the start dates and end dates for the programs. The Assembly, Senate, and Executive Fellowship programs start mid-October. The Executive Fellowship program then ends at the end of August. The Senate and Assembly programs end a week after the end of the legislative session ends. So sometimes it's the first, second, or possibly even third week, depending on the calendar works, of September. Megan, would you share when the Judicial Fellows program starts?
Judicial Fellows start in September, and we run right through the end of June, right beginning of July. So we take those 10 months.
And as the program has indeed shifted to a virtual environment, some of our programs have not required fellows to relocate to the area. We are anticipating more normal times in the year ahead in terms of traditional offerings of placements and so forth. And so our first concern is always the safety of students. So in the upcoming year, should things go back to normal, fellows are indeed required to report to Sacramento to participate in their fellowships placements in person. If in the future those placements are determined to be not of questionable safety, we will be working with each program will be working with all their fellows and their placements to negotiate that, but your safety is always our number one concern. Megan or Jamie, you want to add anything to that?
For the Judicial Fellows, assuming normal times, you are required to move to the place where you'll be serving as a Judicial Fellow. And kind of, it's not permanent though, it's only for 10 months. So consider it an opportunity to explore, be a tourist within the state of California. Some fellows do opt to serve in the community that they grew up in for a variety of reasons, and do stay at home. And say your family's from LA and you want to stay in the LA area, live at home, and serve at the LA court. We do have fellows who do that as well.
We ask that Senate and Assembly fellows be on the ground, be ready and prepared to come into the legislature, into the building as required. Currently, fellows are not allowed to come into the building. Obviously, we have some concerns with regard to the pandemic being at all-time levels, as well as, we have, to be frank, we have protests in and around the building at this time, and they could get worse. So we've asked our fellows to stay at home and work virtually. And that's, until further notice. But last year we were also required to stay home unless considered essential for the day. And that's on a case-by-case situation in which a fellow is staffing a particular piece of legislation. This is in the Senate, and they are required to come in that day, or it's requested by their chief of staff that they come in for that day to be in the building. And so end of session, things like that, the points where there are pressure points in the legislative calendar, such as policy committee deadlines, you'll see that fellows will more likely be in the building, but not across the board. We don't compel fellows to come in during this time with regard to the pandemic, and they work that out with their respective office when approved. And so right now, fellows would not be able to come in. But we hope that by next year, things will be in a better place. And certainly the fellows are still getting a valuable experience as part of the team. Everyone is working virtually right now, though. So for the most part, the only folks that you would see in the building right now are folks that would literally be running, that could run the office. And that wouldn't be a fellow in your first year. for the most part, unless we get to a point where you are working on a piece of legislation you know more than anyone in the state of California on. It's your bill and you're needed to come in. The member wants you briefing them, and we would be able to possibly work that through, depending upon where we were with the virus, where we are, protests, whatever's going on. So a lot of moving parts, but high level communications. I work with Senate and Assembly rules to ensure your safety.
And folks, I'd encourage, if you have any more concerns around the safety of any particular programs or their level of participation in Sacramento or beyond during the pandemic, please do reach out to each individual director as well. We'll be more than happy to answer those questions. Another thing too is a small thing we call the Capitol building the building. So when you hear us say you're going to go into the building, we refer to the actual Capitol building itself, the dome and all the pictures we happen to have there. You'll get to learn all the different types of lingo and acronyms that we happen to have in government. It can be a lot for sure. So I'm going to combine a few questions here that were really good. The primary question being, if your major is outside of the realm of law, policy, and poli-sci, are there opportunities to use your education and experience in the offices and science? And I'm a big firm believer in a broad diversity of majors coming into the fellowship program. So yes, there are plenty of ways to do that. I would say on average, I know for my own program, at least half of the fellows that come in are not poli-sci, law, or politics majors. They are art majors, they are cognitive neuroscience majors, they are biology majors, they are religious studies majors, they are English majors, they are community development majors. There are all kinds of humanities and sciences all over the place for sure. And for that reason, another question was, what advice would you give to applicants who have not had any public policy experience before but want to go into the field? For sure, I think one of the things I think we're all looking for are fellows that are committed to public service, fellows that are committed to making a difference in the lives of others, of communities, be it from everything from students at your home undergraduate campus to your communities you happen to come from, to broader communities beyond that, cities, counties, states, regions, and even at the national level as well. Showing a dedicated commitment to that, which is something we do look for in a number of the applications that we happen to get as far as in your essays and so forth. So I'll let Megan and Jamie chime in on the value of those coming from outside the poli-sci or public policy sphere.
I would echo Brian. Our fellows come from such wide backgrounds, diversity of majors, experience within the judicial branch. It's totally fine to not have had any experience at all within the judicial branch. There's no requirement to be anything but curious about the judicial branch and providing that access to justice for California. I would say that with all the different majors and all the different people we have in the Judicial Fellows program this year, the tie that binds is curiosity. They want to know more, learn more, ask questions, and engage. And that is so vital in all of our programmatic aspects. It's important in the workplace, it's important in field seminar, and it's important in academic seminar.
I would have to agree. We look for a diverse pool of candidates with different backgrounds and different experiences. We look at the whole person. I think what's most important is can you demonstrate somewhere in your academic career, in your life, where you have led? I think most people can lead, but they don't want to lead. Can you demonstrate somewhere in your application, somewhere in your personal statement, something that you've done in your academic career, whether it be anything that you learned, that demonstrates your leadership capacity? That's essentially what I'm looking for. So if there is a rigor associated with your academic experience that lends itself, really, I think that's important. Are you passionate about issues that affect people and that you want to serve them and fix those issues? That should come out in your application. And it doesn't matter what your academic background is. I had a fellow 2 years ago that was a bio major, and that translated extremely well because there's quite a lot of rigor associated with studying bio. And I wondered when I read the application, was there a course correction? Did the fellow sort of not meet the mark as it related to bio and realize this is too hard? No, what happened with the fellow prior to applying to the program and in the sciences is that they realized they didn't want to be in a lab coat, that the problems that were affecting the sciences that mattered to them most was a lack of understanding about how to reach a particular socioeconomic or sociodemographic community. So, this fellow saw that instead of, evaluating illness under a microscope, they wanted to better come up with policy that affected and assisted with STEM, education. So boom, that's a perfect connection and an intersection that you can make. It's not a course correction. This is what I want to do. I realize after my academic experience and my career as a student that I am now, or my experience as a student, I now see that I want to get some real life experience creating change through public policy as opposed to in that academic environment.
So folks, we have a number of smaller questions I think I can answer relatively quickly to give you some insight before I want to make sure we make good use of our time here. Housing is not provided for fellows. Fellows are communicated with in advance during the summertime after they are selected to connect with other fellows, but it is up to you to come to move to Sacramento and to secure housing on your own. Luckily for us, we have a broad community of former fellows and current fellows living in the area that often share communication around apartments or homes or the areas that you happen to live in, but it is up to you to secure your own housing once you before you start your placement. Interviews are conducted by panels. These are not individual interviews. And our panels from all of our programs are no less than 7 members, and they represent not only alumni from the program, but current administrators in each branch and division, as well as our seminar instructor, the director of each respective program, and a specific liaison for each branch. Let's see, I know for the executive branch, one of the questions was, do we know who will be and whose offices will be available for applying or for placement opportunities in the Assembly, Senate, and exec? I know for exec, I will not know that until fellows are just about arriving to Sacramento. Jamie, what about you? What about the rest for the legislative programs?
As I mentioned earlier, October, members apply to our program, and I never know, which offices are going to apply. However, we generally have a lot of the same offices who do a reapply. They recognize the importance of the program. They've created a pipeline, and they are skilled as mentors and as members who recognize the benefits of supporting our program, but also investing in bright, energetic, hardworking fellows like maybe yourselves with great potential to continue to support. So we do have a lot of the same offices who do apply, but this year we've got a lot of new ones. We have new members, so it depends. We get about 5 or 6 new offices a year. The rest are generally the same.
Another question was around transcripts. We don't need an actual approved transcript, just one that's in process or an informal one. Should you be selected to be a fellow, though, we need an actual formal completed transcript from your university by August of that year as well. So for now, just an informal one will work for sure. The phrase is completely elite.
Official and unofficial.
Unofficial. I couldn't believe it. Yes, unofficial transcript is totally fine for the application process. The timeline post deadline. So once the fellowship application deadline closes on the 1st, all 4 programs have our own committees to read through all of these applications. And there are a lot. And as some of you have seen who are applying, the applications are not small, they're not short. But what we do is we work to winnow that down to the number of applicants we have space to be able to interview. And that's a different number per program for sure. But by mid-April, we will be informing fellows of who we will be selecting to interview. And those interviews, as I mentioned before, will be all remote. And those interviews will all take place at the end of April and beginning of May. And then subsequently after that, about a week to 2 weeks after that, we will inform all candidates if they have been selected. So do expect to hear something back from us. If you have been selected to interview or not selected to interview, you will hear back from us for sure by April 12th. And then reapplications. A number of questions have asked around if I reapply again, do I get preference? Every single application year is a brand new application year. So if someone applied one year and didn't get in, and you apply the following year, it's like we're starting all over again. So we have had a number of applicants as well, a number of fellows who've applied multiple years before getting in. You can always apply multiple years before to our program until you get in, but you can only be a fellow for 1 year. Another question that came up was, would you discourage parents from applying to the programs? This is a very unique scenario. We have had individuals with families apply and participate in the program. It is really up to the individual to determine if the kinds of commitment you can provide or be a part of for the fellowship program are able to be worked out with, your own family and situation there. It's really for you to determine. It makes no difference on our end at all. We don't look at it in any other way other than, are you a strong candidate? And that is it. Megan or Jamie, you want to chime in on that?
I think that covers it on our end.
Same with us. Agreed.
One question says, does GPA have a large factor in admissions outside of the bare minimum? Our fellows come in with a wide variety of GPAs. The bare minimum is the bare minimum requirement. And we evaluate fellows comprehensively and on a holistic basis. So it's really about the strength of the entire person and not just one particular area that matters the most. I can speak for sure for the Executive Fellowship Program. Megan or Jamie, any other thoughts on that?
No, we see a lot of different candidates come in with pretty much every GPA you could ever imagine. One of the things that I know happens a lot is that fellows have worked through college. Maybe they're supporting a family, maybe they're supporting themselves and their own nuclear families. So, I think that if you have anything that you'd like to note, you're always welcome to do that in a personal, as part of your personal statement. It's not required. It's not anything that we look for, give special points for, or any preference to. But I would say we kind of leave it at that.
We have about 2 more minutes left here, and I wanted each of us to be able to share a little bit about a question that comes up around about what they should include in their policy statement, and what do you think is the best to share. So, Jamie, I'll let you start from there.
Definitely want to be able to translate why you're passionate about this work. If I can't tell in your application why you want this, I don't know what's at stake for you. So I want you to be vulnerable. I want you to be honest. I want you to tell me the reasons why you're inspired to make a difference, because this is unique work. I always say that if you love it or you leave it alone, you're in these roles in service to others. So it takes a lot of work. You have to be selfless. You have to be passionate about this work. It is tireless work. It's never ending. And so being able to understand your intent and hold on to your intent for the work that you're doing is super crucial. And that, often will come out in your personal statement. And that personal statement is something that you'll need to hold on to for the rest of your career. I go back to my personal statements that I wrote to get into grad school, because life is difficult and sometimes you're off of your normal path, or you can't get something done that you want to do. So it's important to look back at why you're here, and that will cover you, that will carry you through the experience and onward and upward. So just know who you are, share who you are, be open and vulnerable. That's the main thing. And write well. Be sure to write well and be grammatically correct, and don't misspell anything.
Megan?
Yeah, so the Judicial Fellowship Program requires a personal statement, and then we require you answer 2 program questions. One of the program questions asks that you go on to the courts.ca.gov website and look around, explore what the judicial branch is all about, and tell us what you're interested in, what caught your eye. I would say that we've got pretty specific instructions. Follow the instructions to a T. If you have any questions about what the instructions might be, or you need help accessing those instructions, please reach out and we're happy to help you. I did see a few other questions in the chat about like a resume and stuff. We do not require resumes for any of the programs, but you do fill out your work history and your employment history, volunteer, internship, all that sort of thing as part of your program application. So please do not submit a resume as part of your program essays or materials. Otherwise, I think Jamie made a good point too. Double checking your work, make sure it's grammatically correct. Read it out loud in a mirror. If it sounds weird to you, then it might sound funny to someone else. So I wish you all the best of luck. These are fantastic programs, an amazing way to be of service to the state of California. And I'm impressed to see all the applications come through every year. They're not easy. It takes a lot of work. And I thank you in advance for putting in the effort.
So I'll just close by saying I completely agree with both of my colleagues here around the quality and what you should include in your policy statement. I'll just add one small thing. We have very specific requirements as to how long they can be. So I must tell you, if we say maximum 3 pages, if you give us 4 pages, we're probably not reading your application, because we really need folks in these high-level positions to be able to follow instructions. So another thing I'd also encourage is for your personal statement and policy statements, please have someone you trust who is a good writer, who is someone who knows a little bit about yourself and about these programs, or at least the opportunities to read them. Have someone else read your policy statement or personal statement for you as well. The more feedback you get in that, the better you're able to communicate your passion and your interest in our programs in what is relatively a short amount of space on paper. Folks, with that, we're going to close for now. I'm sorry we couldn't get around to all your questions, but if you do have more, you're always welcome to send them to us. And if we can't answer them, we have staff that can as well. Please do check back to the original website that you registered on. That will have the link to the recording of this presentation. But for now, thank you all again for applying and for being a part of this process. And we look forward to reading your application very soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you for your time.